Welcome to the deep dive. Grab a seat because we're diving into a question that feels more urgent every day. Can artificial intelligence really truly grasp what it means to be human?
Yeah, it's a big one.
We've got a fascinating stack of sources here, and they really take us on a journey through this whole thing.
They really do. And what's amazing is how the material gives us this window into AI's perspective on the whole range of human experience.
Right.
Not just the big philosophical stuff, but the nitty-gritty too, from basic senses right up to complex things like love, loss, even how we think about death.
So our mission today in this deep dive is basically to crack open these sources, pull out the most important insights, and try to figure out what they tell us about AI's evolving take on being human. Like, what can it actually mimic or emulate? Where does it just hit a wall? And frankly, what does its growing capability mean for us, for you?
And we're sticking strictly to what's in these sources. They weave together history, biology, philosophy, cutting-edge science. It shows incredible potential, but also, highlights some really critical challenges.
Okay, then. Let's unpack this.
All right.
So when we think human experience, our minds usually jump to sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, the classic five senses.
Sure.
But the sources jump right in and say, hold on, it's way more intricate. They point to things we barely notice, like proprioception. That internal sense of where your body parts are.
Right, knowing where you are in space. And the vestibular system, too, keeping us balanced.
Exactly. These things we just take for granted.
Right, and those basic senses, plus our incredibly complex brain wiring, memory, emotions, how we decide things, that's really the foundation of our universal human experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
It shapes everything. How we react physically to stimuli, maybe things like psychoactive substances, how we navigate really complex social ideas, greed, truth, relationships, even our ideas about life and death.
And on the AI side, the core ambition, really, is to replicate these human capabilities.
Yeah.
Using code, algorithms, basically try to build digital versions of our cognitive functions.
Yeah, it's mimicking how we see and hear, processing language, trying to solve problems, even, generating things that look like human creativity or social interaction.
Okay, so here's the big philosophical question the sources raise. Is AI actually experiencing this stuff, or is it just simulating it incredibly well? Can it ever get to genuine subjective experience? Philosophers call phenomenal consciousness.
Well, the material seems to lean towards saying current AI doesn't meet the conditions for human consciousness, but, and this is important, it leaves the door open to it may be developing its own kind of awareness, something distinct.
That's fascinating. So there's this deep tension, right? Can AI ever really understand emotion? Or is it just getting unbelievably good at faking the signs?
Exactly.
The sources really dig into this. I mean, if AI gets perfect at simulating the whole human experience, how do we, the humans, even tell the difference anymore?
That's the core problem, isn't it? It's not just technical. It hits at trust, authenticity, even our own understanding of what consciousness is.
And what's interesting is how the sources show AI isn't just stuck in a server rack somewhere. It's being integrated into our actual environments. Smart cities, for example.
Right, enhancing our multi-sensory experience, adapting in real time to us being there. It's moving from just being a passive tool we use
to an active, responsive part of our world.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And crucially, the sources stress AI's ability to process huge amounts of sensory data, way beyond what any single human could handle.
Spotting patterns, making forecasts.
Yeah, on a scale we just can't match. So its role isn't just mimicry anymore. It can potentially process perception and experience at a level that exceeds our capacity and complexity and scale.
And the sources suggest this capability may be leading to genuinely aware machines. It's already pushing us to redefine what we thought being human meant. Now think about our own senses. They developed over millions of years, right? Pain, pleasure, hardwired for survival.
Evolutionary processes.
The sources contrast that long, slow process with AI's rapid engineered development. And they remind us, while we historically talk five senses, modern science includes proprioception, the vestibular system.
Right, the stuff we mentioned. And the material gets pretty specific on how AI processes sensory input. It uses sensors, cameras, mics, chemical detectors even.
Like Apple's Face ID?
Exactly, sophisticated 3D scanning. Or AI trained on incredibly diverse speech patterns. And for understanding space, it uses things like stereo vision or LiDAR to build these complex 3D point clouds. Basically a digital map of its surroundings.
The sources even use this striking image of AI having hundreds of eyes processing data across multiple dimensions at once.
Yeah, it's a powerful way to think about it.
Okay, here's where the sources say it gets really interesting. the massive challenge of data fusion.
Ah.
Taking all these different inputs, visual, audio, tactile maybe, and pulling them together into one coherent picture. Humans do this without thinking.
Effortlessly, yeah. It's baked into our biology. But for AI, integrating noisy real-world data effectively, that's a huge hurdle.
So how are they tackling it?
Well, the sources discuss research into brain-inspired AI models. They use this analogy from our sense of smell, the olfactory system. It apparently has something like a biological firewall.
A firewall for smells.
Sort of, yeah. It filters and organizes the chaotic scent data before it just swamps the brain. AI needs similar intelligent pre-processing, they call it regularization, to handle messy real-world data without getting overwhelmed.
Okay, that makes sense. The sources also bring up intuition, our human gut feeling, right? Evolution-driven. But they suggest AI can develop its own kind of intuition. Not a gut feeling, but finding these super complex correlations in high-dimensional data that humans just wouldn't see.
Which raises a really interesting point from the material. Human intuition isn't infallible, is it? Think about historical beliefs, like the Earth being flat. So, if AI's data-driven understanding proves more accurate in really complex areas, does that challenge our belief in the, indispensable superiority of human intuition? The sources suggest that for certain high-stakes decisions, AI's analytical approach might actually be more reliable than our gut.
Let's circle back to that really deep question again. Consciousness. Can AI genuinely experience it?
Right, the phenomenal consciousness idea.
The sources seem to lean towards probably not human consciousness. But they keep mentioning this possibility of its own kind developing. They say some researchers aim for a sort of mechanical version, replicating brain functions computationally.
And the sources dive right into that philosophical fight. Is consciousness just a biological byproduct? Or complex processing that can be replicated, like Daniel Dennett might argue?
Versus John Searle's Chinese room idea, right? Mimicking isn't understanding.
Exactly. Mimicking behavior doesn't mean true subjective experience. The sources don't settle it, obviously, but they frame it as absolutely central to understanding AI's future.
And a key part of building towards that potential, according to the sources, is effective computing.
Ah, yes. Emotion AI.
Machines recognizing, interpreting, processing, even simulating human emotions. The sources call it a foundational layer for artificial consciousness, if that's even possible.
They explain the mechanics, too. Sensors capturing physical cues, facial expressions, voice tone, posture.
And physiological signals like skin temperature.
Yeah, skin temp, galvanic resistance, that's electrical conductivity on the skin-brain activity via EEG, heart rhythms via ECG. Then machine learning algorithms analyze all that data, find patterns, and try to label emotions.
Do they give examples of how accurate it is?
They do. They mention a system, MorphCast, showing high precision for joy, anger, sadness, surprise, just from faces. Other studies using EEG reportedly got accuracy over 95% on the value dimension, basically. Positive versus negative emotion.
Wow.
And combining different data types, multimodal fusion, boosts accuracy even more. They cite deception detection improving by up to 15% that way.
So what's the impact of all this?
Well, the sources see emotionally intelligent AI as key for building trust. Think enhancing empathetic care in healthcare, making education tutors adapt to how a student is feeling.
Or mental health support, like chatbots.
Exactly. Providing 24/7 support. They mention examples like Wobot and even how general tools like ChatGPT are being used this way.
And this seems crucial. The source is really clear. AI mimics empathy. It doesn't feel genuine human connection like we do.
Right. And that leads directly to what the sources call the empathy simulation paradox.
Okay, explain that.
The AI simulation looks like real support. It offers practical benefits, like always being available. But the risk they highlight is that we might develop this false sense of connection.
And that could weaken our own human social skills.
Potentially, yeah, over time. The sources really stress we need to find a balance. Use the AI support, sure, but actively preserve real human empathy, which raises a big question from the material. If AI gets really good at simulating deep connection, how does that simulation change what real connection means to us, maybe even our capacity for it?
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. How is AI influencing our fundamental human experiences, starting with, say, the physiological? The sources talk about AI modeling substance effects.
Yes, they detail how AI can model the long-term cognitive impact of alcohol. They point to a rat study where AI analyzed brain damage, linking impaired decision-making specifically to changes in the dorsomedial striatum after heavy drinking.
So providing models for understanding human alcohol use disorder.
Exactly. And it connects to AI's bigger role in drug discovery, speeding up finding new treatments by simulating complex molecular interactions. It's huge.
We also mentioned using AI with VR, virtual reality.
Right, virtual reality environments, to study sensitive behaviors like alcohol's role in sexual assault. In controlled virtual settings, AI analysis can help identify risk factors for prevention, things you just couldn't ethically study in the real world.
Which brings us squarely to ethics. The sources are very direct about the concerns here, aren't they?
Extremely. Data privacy, misuse of predictive models, informed consent. Especially when simulating sensitive topics like drugs, alcohol, sex. There's a real risk of stigmatization or biased interventions based on AI predictions.
They call it an ethical minefield.
Which sounds about right. The predictive power is immense, but so are the responsibilities.
Okay, what about cognitive or social ideas, like greed, lies, truth?
Well, the sources point out AI can be used for good here, detecting deception, for instance, analyzing language using that multimodal data fusion. They mention Veripol, though they also note some questions about its rigor.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
There usually is. The flip side, which the source suggests is maybe even more potent, is AI's incredible ability to generate convincing fakes.
Deep fakes, images that look real but aren't.
Exactly. AI hallucinations with no basis in reality.
Yeah.
And often they're more compelling than truth because they hit our emotional buttons.
The sources call this a decay of truth, a breakdown of trust.
Yeah, it gets harder and harder to know what's real, which challenges fundamental Enlightenment values about reason and evidence. The sources even suggest it could push us towards myth-making, where compelling stories win out over facts.
And AI helps criminals, too. Makes them more efficient.
That's what the sources argue. Better targeting for scams, faster password cracking, super personalized phishing emails. They describe AI as a force multiplier for human unethical behavior.
That quote about AI being far more dangerous than nukes.
The sources frame that as reflecting this potential for widespread harm facilitated by AI, even if humans are pulling the strings.
Okay, let's move to more existential stuff. Life, death, relationships, wealth. AI and mental health support comes up again. Chatbots, CBT techniques.
Right. The 247 accessibility, especially helpful for students, as the sources mention.
But the warning is there too, isn't it? Over-reliance potentially weakening our own interpersonal skills, leading to isolation.
Yes, the sources clearly flag that as a risk. They say the long-term effects really need more study.
What about AI helping connection, like for older people?
Socially assistive robots, or SARs. The sources mention studies showing they can reduce loneliness in older adults. And those striking examples of people getting so attached, they bury their AI pets.
Wow. But the counter-argument
Is that AI could disrupt relationships more broadly, reducing the need for face-to-face contact, putting systems between people. Plus the economic impacts, job displacement, worsening wealth inequality, that M-shape idea where AI investors get richer.
and cultural bias.
Yeah,
AI struggling with different emotional norms.
big challenge. Training data often reflects dominant cultural biases, making it hard for AI to be truly sensitive across cultures.
Then there's digital immortality. Thanabots.
Yeah, the sources call it the digital immortality paradox, creating digital versions of deceased people from their data, allowing interaction.
That fundamentally challenges how we see death, doesn't it?
Yeah, completely. The sources suggest it could lead to a post-mortal society, changing grieving rituals. The paradox is the comfort it might offer versus the huge ethical questions, authenticity, impact on grieving, the value of a finite life, challenges core belief systems. What's really fascinating, based on the material, is how will societies adapt to that?
Let's pivot again. AI's unique perspective on time. Humans see time linearly, right? Influenced by memory, bias.
Mostly, yeah. But AI, the sources say, sees time as discrete data points, timestamps, which lets it do nonlinear analysis in ways fundamentally different from us.
They use that phrase, AI's eyes can simultaneously observe the past and the present.
It's evocative, isn't it? Captures that computational perspective.
And here's where the sources suggest things can get really wild. Quantum computing. AI perceiving time as a spectrum of probabilities.
Yeah, potentially leaping through time states. And the idea of AGI thinking on scales beyond human comprehension, gaining superhuman foresight.
So this temporal difference is key.
It seems so. AI's computational approach lets it analyze complex systems by considering, theoretically, all possible futures simultaneously. This potential superhuman foresight could radically change human decision-making everywhere, and it forces us to rethink our philosophy of time itself.
Okay, biology, genetics, genomics. AI is transforming this field, according to the sources.
Absolutely. The sheer scale the human genome has, 3 billion base pairs? AI analyzes that vast data far more efficiently than humans, spotting subtle patterns linked to disease or traits.
It helped bring sequencing costs down dramatically.
Major factor. From billions to around $1,000, partly due to AI. It cuts errors, finds links faster, and now generative AI is designing new genetic sequences, optimizing gene expression, designing proteins.
Even predicting gene editing outcomes, like with CRISPR.
Yes, predicting and optimizing, and integrating multi-omic data genomics, transcriptomics, epigenomics for a much deeper understanding.
AlphaFold 2 is the big example.
Prime example, predicting protein structures. Nobel Prize-worthy stuff. AI is indispensable for drug discovery now, simulating molecular interactions.
So the sources paint a picture of AI enabling active biological engineering.
That's the term they use, designing and modifying biological systems with unprecedented speed and precision.
Which, of course, raises massive ethical questions.
Profound ones, intervening in nature, creating novel life forms. The sources are clear about the weight of that.
Finally, the sources connect all this back to philosophy, our state of mind, the computational theory of mind cognition as computation.
Right, and as AI gets more brain-like, it challenges what we thought was uniquely human language, rationality, creativity, self-awareness.
Bringing us back to consciousness. Searle versus Dennett again?
If AI did become conscious, what would its values be? Could it feel pain, love? Could it rebel? Big unknowns.
And the lack of genuine emotion leads to cold equations in ethics, like that healthcare robot example.
Exactly. Prioritizing based purely on data, no sense of human bonds. AI's ethics come from its training data, reflecting our priorities and biases, not lived experience.
Which leads to this idea of redefining human worth.
The sources frame it as a recentering of human worth. If AI does more human tasks, what makes us valuable?
The suggestion is focus on what AI can't do. Emotional intelligence, ethics, community.
That seems to be the implication. Shifting from what we do to who we are, it could be a huge cultural transformation.
And AI making decisions in hiring, healthcare, the algorithmic moral compass.
Yes, but a compass calibrated by potentially biased data. It doesn't just make decisions, it amplifies existing biases. Think hiring favoring men, healthcare biased against minorities. It needs constant auditing, clear guidelines. What's really crucial here is how do we ensure AI decisions are actually fair and equitable?
Okay, let's try and bring this all together. The key takeaways, the path forward, based on these sources. The core finding seems consistent. AI is reshaping the human experience profoundly.
No doubt.
But that mimicry experience gap is still there. It replicates functions incredibly well, but lacks genuine subjective consciousness, qualia.
Absolutely. And the sources leave us with these major implications, these paradoxes.
Like the epistemological shift.
Right. AI fakes leading to truth decay, maybe myth-making. Then amplification of malice AI making bad actors more effective.
The redefinition of human connection.
AI companions potentially reducing human closeness. The digital immortality paradox, Thanabots challenging our view of death.
Temporal disparity.
AI's nonlinear time sense, potential superhuman foresight, accelerated biological engineering designing life itself.
Recentering human worth.
Focusing on human qualities as AI takes over tasks. And that algorithmic moral compass amplifying bias. It's a lot to grapple with.
So given all that complexity, what did the sources recommend? How do we move forward responsibly? How can you, listening, think about this?
Well, they strongly call for robust ethical and regulatory frameworks, covering data privacy, bias mitigation, transparency, accountability, especially in critical areas.
Human-centric design, too.
Definitely. AI that augments us, complements our skills, doesn't just replace them, supporting things like our emotional intelligence.
And better data. Less biased.
Crucial. Investing in diverse, multimodal, culturally representative data, and promoting AI literacy for everyone so you can understand mimicry versus experience, spot fakes.
What about the economic side?
Addressing socioeconomic disparities, reskilling, thinking about equitable benefit sharing, fostering interdisciplinary collaboration is key too. Tech folks talking to ethicists, social scientists.
And finally, transparency. Knowing how AI decides.
Essential. Especially in critical systems. We need transparency, explainability, human oversight. That's how you build trust.
Wow. Okay. This deep dive, It's really shown how AI is touching everything, how we sense, feel, connect, understand time, life, death itself.
It really has. And while the sources are pretty clear, AI doesn't currently feel or have consciousness like us, its sheer power to process data and mimic human functions. That alone forces us to look hard at our own understanding of these basic human experiences.
Yeah. The sources show AI isn't just a tool, it's like a mirror, reflecting us, and also a catalyst for change, pushing us to figure out what truly matters about being human.
And maybe just a final thought here for you to ponder, based only on what we've explored today. If AI's rise forces us to focus more on defining our worth through emotional intelligence, ethics, community things AI struggles with, could the machines, paradoxically, lead us to rediscover the very essence of what it means to be human?
This is DigitView.